Alright, so we know that some of the blocks in Minecraft just suck for building. Some of them have bad colour schemes, some are texture nightmares, but there are also some blocks that are great for building that I use consistently, and I wanted to highlight 10 of each category. But before you get your fingers in a twist writing a comment like, "But sponge is the best, Grian, it's my favourite block," this is my opinion of course, and I'm sure a lot of people will agree. Aye, let's do this. Okay, so here are my 10 least favourite blocks for building houses with, and I'm pretty sure it will become very clear why. The first one is a bit of a weird one, because yes, wool is a very, very useful block, but I really don't like it when it's used in houses. I don't think it's appropriate, because I see wool as a very cloth-like texture, exactly like it's intended. I really don't see it fitting as a house, because you wouldn't make a house out of fabric unless it was a tent, and if it was a tent, I would completely say use wool, or on top of a market stall, use wool, because it's more appropriate. But when wool is used in this way, and I do see this quite frequently, I just don't think it works very well. Next up is emerald. There are tons of people out there that think, I'm rich, I'm going to make my house out of emerald, diamond, iron, and gold. The textures really don't work for building a house. I actually like iron for sort of space age stuff, but gold and diamond and emerald really only work as sort of piles of diamond, emerald, and gold. Next up is netherrack. Netherrack is one of my least favourite blocks because it just looks kind of gross. It used to be called bloodstone, and it is literally cobblestone but bleeding. In a nether situation, it kind of works because everything's covered in this rather nasty looking block. In a horror situation, I would say, yeah, it works. And all of these blocks that I'm going through have a use outside of it. I'm just saying, in the context of a house, they don't really work. And next up is one of the ones that probably triggers me quite a lot. It's the use of glowstone in a house like this. It should be used to light stuff up. However, there is a better alternative, which we'll come to later. Next up is the one that everyone was expecting, sponge. I really don't have much to say. Unless you're making cheese, sponge isn't a very good choice for a house. Polished diorite is a little bit of a controversial one. I've seen lots of people use this, and it can be used correctly. However, in the everyday house, it looks like static on a TV, and the texture that it makes with that grid pattern is not something that looks good with a wall. However, it does have a pretty good use as a floor block. The one we've got now is the magma block. Now, this one is also a little controversial. I'm definitely using it out of context on this build, but I just wanted to make the point that it does look like a honeycomb. It doesn't really have a suitable use outside of a lava area, and that's fine, but I like to analyze every single block in every use possible. Next up is the purpur house. I like purpur as a block. It's got some nice textures. However, because of the colour of it, it doesn't synergize very well in a house environment. And of course there are going to be tons of blocks which are not suitable for it. But if you were to use this in a bathroom or a kitchen, I'm sure it would fit in really nicely. And of course, in the end would do as well. It's not only the texture that puts me off, but mainly the colour that just has not a lot of synergy with other blocks when you were going to make a building out of it. Prismarine bricks. Now this is actually one of my least favourite blocks because it doesn't even synergize with itself. The pattern that it creates is really bizarre. I love dark prismarine, but the prismarine blocks, it looks really weird. Whenever you have these diagonal textures, much like the emerald block, they just don't seem to fit together very well. Lots of people have said in the past that it looks great as an underwater house, and I would say that that's probably because the water is obscuring it a bit, but as a house like that, it's not very attractive. Lapis lazuli. Definitely one of the worst blocks for building in. The colour is great, and that frustrates me because I'd love to use it, but the grid pattern that you get really limits you when you're using it for a wall block. But this is much like diorite, where you could use it on the floor. So, All of these blocks have a use. I'm not saying that they are completely useless for building altogether. Just in these house examples and using them for making walls and stuff, I just wanted to point out that many people do this, and then they may even think, I really regret that, but I can't be bothered to fix it. And I just see lots of houses where they use blocks for walls, which I just totally disagree with. So I thought I wanted to highlight that these have better alternatives when you're making a house. And let's get into those now. The first one is stained clay. This block is brilliant. It covers all of the colours that wool has. Although they're slightly more painful to acquire, you can't farm them like you can with wool. But it really does look a lot better. The texture is smoother. It doesn't remind me of fabric. So when you look for some sort of coloured build, you want something solid like that. And you could use it for terrain and all sorts. You wouldn't exactly make a terrain out of wool, unless perhaps you're making like candy or stuff. It's all very situational. Next up is stone brick. Stone brick is a very, very versatile block. Not only is it part of what I like to call the grey category, part of the cobblestone family and any other block that's grey, it has two variations which are pretty unique. The mossy stone brick and the cracked stone brick. Now these open a whole plethora of opportunities for dungeons, for castles, anything like that. The textures are amazing. Next up is spruce wood planks. For anyone that's been watching my channel, you will know that this is my go-to block for building houses and structures and that kind of thing. There's a couple of reasons for this. Number one is it's my favourite colour in real life, brown, and the second reason is it's accessible and it synergizes so well with other blocks such as log. You will see me use this block time and time again, probably when I don't even have to. I love the colour and the texture that this has, even though it's just a plank block. The sea lantern is my alternative to glowstone. Now you wouldn't make the wall of a house out of either of these blocks. The point I want to make on this particular one is that they both give off light, and the sea lantern is the best option to use. If you took this, for example, and made the light glowstone, it would look so unsightly. Whenever I use glowstone in a house, I try and hide it. Whenever I have sea lanterns, I try and proudly present it. When I use glass in my builds, I tend to favour the coloured stained glass panes over any other glass block. And the examples can be seen throughout the video, but the reason is that the original glass texture just sort of stands out a lot more, and it doesn't seem to synergize as well. That's not to say that the normal glass pane goes into the worst block category, but I just wanted to say that the stained glasses are definitely one of my favorites and one of my top building blocks. Now this one's probably going to cause a little bit of controversy. Snow. I always used to use snow because as a veteran player of Minecraft, there was not really a good white block. This is before quartz even existed. However, the texture of snow still to this day remains the best white block in my opinion. The quartz block creates that grid pattern which is mainly suitable for floors, so as a wall block, I think snow works really well because of the colour and the texture. Next up is log. Now I use log all the time. It's the go-to block for framing, and I have to include it because it's just used so much. It's a very, very versatile block. Next up is nether brick. Now some people will say I'm not using this correctly, but the reason it's in my top best blocks is because of the colour. There are very few dark colours of this shade of red, and it's just unique in that sense. So any block that has the staircase and the slab available is going to be very, very useful. And that brings me on to cobblestone and why this one is in my top list as well. Not only is it everywhere, and I mean everywhere, it has a unique block, the cobblestone wall. This has its own shape. It's slightly thicker than your average fence, and it just allows you to do so much more detailing. Now you probably wouldn't expect leaves to be in my top blocks for building houses, but honestly the contrast of leaves or in fact grass blocks. Anything green gives a really nice contrast, and I do try to put that forward in my tutorials. But for example, here where we have a rundown house, we can make it so much better by making it overgrown with these leaves as vines, but you can also use them in a multitude of different situations. Lastly is an odd one. It's the bone block. This is much like a log block, but the color is very, very different. And BotBox actually said to me, this should be in your top block list, and I was like, why? And he's like, I will make a killer example, and he definitely delivered, so thank you for that, BotBox. I have to eat my words. I'm not too sure about the texture on the top, but the sides definitely make for an excellent framing block, especially if you're going to be using sandstone and birch like BotBox did here. It's a perfect alternative, apart from snow, to the quartz block, because it's that little bit more darker and dirty than the quartz. It's not quite as pristine, and it doesn't have that tile texture. Okay, so that was my top 10 best and worst blocks for building in Minecraft, but I do need to say, the way that we use blocks when we build is pretty much everything. The way we make pallets, the way we put them together and structure our builds, it's a very complex process, and I don't want to tell you how to build because of course there's no right or wrong way, but there are builds that look better or worse than others. I'm just trying to help push you in the direction of looking better, and making sure you use the right blocks in the right situation is paramount. The worst blocks for building in the housing section is going to vary, of course, because some of those blocks work in other situations. Like I said, many of the blocks I said would be bad for walls would work perfectly well as a floor block, but I find that the top blocks for building have many more uses than the ones that I highlighted in the worst section. So I just wanted to make that disclaimer. I actually ended up re-uploading this video because I didn't get the message I wanted across, and that means everything to me. If I give out bad information, I can't sit there and take it. I have to be proud of every video I put out. So hopefully the message has changed, and anyone that managed to watch both videos, even though it was only up for a few hours, let me know if this was a bit better. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, everyone. I really, really appreciate it. The support on my channel has been absolutely mind-boggling. I have a few announcements to make in the coming weeks, and I will probably do that in the form of a vlog. Again, thank you very much for watching. Goodbye!